Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Today on Earth Focus, the secrets of wildlife filmmaking with Chris Palmer and why he wants to reform the wildlife film business. Coming up on Earth Focus. Wildlife films offer a visual and dynamic connection to the natural world. Today, as the threat to wildlife is greater than ever, the market for animal films is exploding. Filmmakers face ethical questions like, can you show the lives of wild animals without fudging the truth? And do you exploit wild animals to thrill audiences, keeping ratings and profits high? Veteran wildlife filmmaker Chris Palmer is calling for a reform of his industry. Chris Palmer goes a long way to make a film. He's gone eye to eye with wolves, bears, and whales for 25 years to produce more than 300 hours of programming for channels like Disney and Animal Planet, as well as for the IMAX giant screen. He is the founder of the Center for Environmental Filmmaking at American University in Washington, D.C., where he is both on the faculty and a distinguished film producer in residence. Palmer speaks about his new book, Shooting in the Wild, with Earth Focus correspondent Miles Benson.
Chris Palmer, you're one of the real pioneers. You started out almost a quarter century ago making films and videos of wildlife. Why'd you get into that? How'd you get into it? And what were you trying to tell people?
I got into it, Miles, because I was concerned about the state of the environment. I worked for the National Audubon Society, and I was worried that we weren't doing enough. We were very focused then on Audubon magazine. That was our vehicle for reaching people. And back in 1981, I said to myself, well, wait a minute, we have to do more than this. We have to get into television. Our goal was to promote conservation in a responsible way, not to produce propaganda, to show all sides, but to produce programs that would ultimately encourage conservation and the wise use of resources.
Now, you've written a book now that's called Shooting in the Wild, an insider's account of movie making in the animal kingdom.
Right.
You telling us some secrets in this book?
I am. A lot of the time, these films are made with captive animals, with controlled animals, animals that had been tamed. These animals don't always behave the way that real wild animals behave. They have sometimes been mistreated, held in game farms where they are taken out of and put in areas to make them look like wild animals.
Why do they do that? Why do the filmmakers do that?
Television is a money game. Ratings and branding dominate. Television is a business about delivering demographically desirable segments of the audience to advertisers. This means that networks are under incredible pressure to deliver exciting footage. But it is very expensive to go out and film animals completely naturally. It takes months. You know, finding a blue whale in the ocean is hard. Finding a wolf, a wild wolf in the Yukon is hard. It takes weeks. And this means that the people like myself who make films for these networks are under incredible pressure to produce dramatic films with little money in short time frames. That pushes us to do things that in retrospect we might regret and be embarrassed about.
Among your films was one about bears. Let's take a look.
Alaska has over 30,000 brown bears, one of the highest populations in the world. And that's exactly why Chris Day has made it her home. Chris's extensive experience with the bears of this area has allowed her to watch them safely at close range. Over the years, they've become accustomed to her, and Chris has given them names to help identify them.
Solstice is a 10-year-old female that I've known since she was just a cub. I was afraid our relationship would change when she had her own cubs, but it hasn't. from the very beginning, I've been lucky enough to watch them grow up too. In Alaska, cubs usually stay with their mother for 2 to 3 years before they go out on their own. Last spring, when they were only 6 months old, I could already see the differences between them. One cub was pretty timid and stayed close to Mom. The other was much more adventurous, a lot like Solstice when she was a cub. In all the years I've spent with the bears, watching them fight, play, raising their young, I felt a lot of emotions, but I've never felt afraid. I've never once felt threatened by a bear.
Does that particular film contain any examples of things you used to do you wouldn't do anymore?
It does. For example, when we see that picture of that woman, her name is Chris Day, she looks quite close. Now, it's slightly distorted because we're using a telescopic lens, but she is close. So that's one problem, is we are exhibiting behavior in the film that other people might copy. Because if young people see Chris Day getting close to wild bears, they will naturally say to themselves, oh, I'd like to do that. That is dangerous. It's not good for the bears. You habituate them. You get them used to humans. And you yourself may not mean them any harm. But the next person they see may be a hunter who does mean them harm. The other thing about this segment you've just shown from bears is that there's a sudden change in ecosystem. We hope the viewers didn't notice, and they probably didn't. But we went from Alaska to a different ecosystem. Why? Because in that second ecosystem, we used captive bears. We didn't tell the audience. The audience thinks they're wild bears. But you can never get footage like we showed there, up close with wild bears. It wouldn't be responsible, wouldn't be safe.
But the truth about animals isn't always exciting, isn't always going to draw an audience.
Right.
A lot of their life might be considered dull.
Well, you're absolutely right. If you look at a lion, I think 80%, 85, maybe even 90% of the time of a lion is spent just doing nothing. You know, but that doesn't make good television. That is dull. I mean, so we've got a conflict here between the natural world with its beauty and slow rhythms and television with its rapacious greed for action.
You also made a film about whales. Let's take a look.
On occasion, members of Payne's scientific team must approach near enough to check the general health of an individual whale by close inspection of its skin. Though the diver is here to observe the whale, her subject seems just as interested in her. Observing whales in their habitat can be dangerous. A blow from a fluke that weighs a ton could easily render a diver unconscious.
What was there in that scene in particular you should tell us about?
A young woman called Kim gets into the water with right whales. Now, we hear the voiceover saying that sometimes Roger Payne needs to send scientists into the water to inspect the skin of whales to see that they're healthy. This is a lie. That whole footage you just seen was driven by the film, not driven by science. We wanted to have a picture of a young woman swimming with right whales. So what do? We don't tell the audience this. We went down and we put sounds of right whales in the water. We emitted them with a sound transmitter in order to draw them in, just like a hunter would use the bird sounds to bring in a bird so he could kill it. Why? Why did we do this? Because we were desperate. We had 1 day left. Money was running out. We hadn't got the shot. We wanted the shot. We knew it would be a powerful shot. Our goal was to produce a program, a film that would knock people's socks off. By the way, let me point out just very quickly a very good thing here, a good thing, because there's lots of good things about wildlife filming. I don't want to sound too negative. It's just, but we filmed these whales from up high on a cliff, which is good. That's good to film in a way that you don't interfere with the animals. I'll see a lot of the filmmaking that goes on actually interferes with the animals' behavior. You have to get close. The animals know you're there. So it impacts their behavior.
What recommendations would you have for the future?
Well, my book, Shooting in the Wild, ends up with a plan for reforming the wildlife film industry. And so what I recommend, Miles, is that we produce films that are more entertaining, because if we don't, we're not going to win an audience. So using drama and humor and things like this, very, very important. Also, I recommend that we make films that don't harm animals. We become much more conscious of the impact of filmmaking on the harassment of wildlife. We need to use new media to create campaigns around these films to achieve changes in behavior and in public policy. We also need to be more green in our filmmaking. You know, when we go out filmmaking, we need to not leave garbage around. We need to clean up. We shouldn't be, taking bottled water on location. We should be, and so on. We got to walk the talk. So those are some of the recommendations.
Chris Palmer, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Miles. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world. To learn more, visit linktv.org.